But today I want to talk about the gatekeepers, as they're called, in the black community. Who are the gatekeepers and what do they do? The definition of a gatekeeper is an attendant at a gate who is employed to control who goes through. And a second definition is a person or thing that controls access to something. The Boule is said to be the gatekeepers of the black community. The Boule is made up of members of Sigma Pi Phi fraternity. It is the first Greek letter society for African American men, and it was founded in 1904. As a point of reference, Booker T. Washington had founded the National Negro Business League in 1900 to promote the interests of African American businesses, and the main purpose of his organization was to promote commercial and financial development of black businessmen and women. It is important to note that Booker T. Washington's organization was open to women. It was established in 1900, so we have to know that there was a lot of discrimination against women at that time, but he did include women because he understood that in order for the African American people to advance, it was going to take both men and women. The Boule was only open to men, college-educated men. The Boule only accepts membership from men who are already successful in business. They don't have chapters on college campuses. However, they have a congenial relationship with black fraternities, as in they are very welcoming to members of Kappa Alpha Psi, Omega Psi Phi, Alpha Phi Alpha, Phi Beta Sigma, and Iota Phi Theta. So these two business networks, the National Negro Business League and the Boule, were established to help African Americans network in business, commerce, education, politics, whatever the case would be, because the established white associations were not available to them. They were not open to them. The distinction should be made that the National Negro Business League was open to any African Americans that were active in business, pursuing business ventures, whereas the Boule offered membership to professional people, college graduates. Booker T. Washington and Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois were sort of adversaries at this time. And Booker T. Washington, of course, belonged to the Negro Business League, and Dr. Du Bois was an early member of the Boule. Also, Booker T. Washington was very supportive of Black Wall Street in Tulsa. So that has to be noted. To know what the Boule does is to know who the members are. And this is a small list of men that belong or did belong to the Boule. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, author, professor, and activist. Dr. Martin Luther King, civil rights leader. Ralph Bunche, ambassador to the United Nations. Andrew Young, mayor of Atlanta, ambassador to the United Nations and civil rights leader. Douglas Wilder, governor of Virginia. Thurgood Marshall, Supreme Court Justice. Eric Holder, Attorney General of the United States under President Obama. John Lewis, a congressman from Georgia. And Kenneth Chenault, who was the CEO of American Express. These are African American leaders. They come from all walks of life, from politics, government, education, and business. They are called the gatekeepers of the African American community. I will read their mission statement, and then I can discuss what I know that some of these organizations do that these men belong to in addition to the Boule. Their statement says that they are modeling leadership, education, and civic responsibility by supporting these endeavors and by mentoring the young men who will advance the African American community in all facets of equality, mutual respect, and devotion to democratic traditions. Also, in their historical information, they say that in the early years of Sigma Pi Phi, They were a secret organization, but in 1982 they adopted a policy of limited and selected publicity, and that usually has to do with money. When you open your organization up in ways like that, it's usually to do with the fact of money. Sigma Pi Phi, the Boule, like all black Greek fraternities and sororities, is a service organization. These organizations were formed in the early 1900s, and the whole idea of them was to service the African American community because we did not have access to white organizations and associations. So these men and women formed these organizations to address the needs in the African American community. As far as these organizations being gatekeepers of the African American community, it first must be stated that every community has gatekeepers. The mayor, the city council, the governor, the state legislature, the President of the United States, the U.S. Congress, the Supreme Court, and everybody who works under those headings is a gatekeeper. So every community has gatekeepers. In the African American community, there is nobody who has any power outside of what the collective of African Americans give. So people who are operating as gatekeepers are people that are reliable in the sense that they do hold responsible positions. They have built successful businesses or successful careers for themselves. They are vetted in a way that any white person would be vetted. So if you need somebody to do something for the African American community, you go for the person that's already doing something in the African American community that the people respect.
National liberation, national reawakening, restoration of the nation to the people or commonwealth. Whatever the name used, whatever the latest expression, decolonization is always a violent event. At whatever level we study it, individual encounters, a change of name for a sports club, the guest list at a cocktail party, members of a police force, or the board of directors of a state or private bank. Decolonization is quite simply the substitution of one species of mankind by another. The substitution is unconditional, absolute, total, and seamless. We could go on to portray the rise of a new nation, the establishment of a new state, its diplomatic relations, and its economic and political orientation. But instead, we have decided to describe the kind of tabula rasa, which from the outset defines any decolonization. What is singularly important is that it starts from the very first day with the, excuse me, what is singularly important is that it starts from the very first day with the basic claims of the colonized. In actual fact, proof of success lies in the social fabric that has been changed inside out. This change is extraordinarily important because it is desired, clamored for, and demanded. The need for this change exists in a raw, repressed, and reckless state that lives in the consciousness of colonized men and women. But the eventuality of such a change is also experienced as a terrifying future in the conscience of another species of men and women, the colons or the colonists. Decolonization, which sets out to change the order of the world, is clearly an agenda for total disorder. But it cannot be accompanied by the wave of a magical wand, a natural cataclysm, or a gentleman's agreement. Decolonization, we know, is an historical process. In other words, it can only be understood. It can only find its significance and become self-coherent insofar as so we can discern the history-making movement which gives its form and substance. Decolonization is the encounter between two congenitally antagonistic forces that in fact owe their singularity to the kind of reification secreted and nurtured by the colonial situation. Their first confrontation was colored by violence and their cohabitation, or rather the exploitation of the colonized by the colonizer, continued at the point of the bayonet and under cannon fire. The colonist and the colonized are old acquaintances, and consequently, the colonist is right when he says he knows them. It is the colonist who fabricated and continues to fabricate the colonized subject. The colonist derives his validity, i.e., his wealth, from the colonial system. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Happy Monday. Welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants. I am Joseph Ward, and we are starting our reading and review of Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, which was published in, let's see, it was published in 1963. So we're reading thoughts from 1963, and I'm starting on page 1 and reading to page 30. This chapter is on violence. Chapter 1 is on violence. The actual chapter is 60 pages, but I want to split it up so we can make sure that we are getting what he's writing. So we're going to go with the first 30 pages for this video and the next 30 pages for the next video. But starting out talking about what it takes to decolonize a people, for people to decolonize themselves, to free themselves of colonization, to free themselves of, i.e., oppression, white supremacy. The video I was showing at the beginning was a video from a woman who calls herself Lady Boule. And Lady Boule is giving us the history of the Boule. And I'm linking that video to what we're reading in here, because as I read more, you will see Frantz Fanon is talking about the role that the gatekeepers play in either helping the decolonization to happen or hurting the decolonization. But either way, we're going to learn about the role that the so-called gatekeepers play in helping to ensure that us as African Americans or Black people anywhere in the diaspora are able to, regain our place in the world, be able to self-actualize, be able to become more than what we have been brought here to be, which is a labor force, right? But as Frantz Fanon said, decolonization in itself, it comes with violence, because you were colonized through violence, and you're not going to be decolonized through political means that may not lead to some kind of actual clash. Remember, arms is one of the things that the Western world, they spend a lot of money on arms to defend themselves, to maintain what they have. So don't get it twisted. You can try to be diplomatic. You can try, like you say, you can try to agree your way out of it or pray your way out of all these things here. But remember, we are still here. We're still under the system. So what will it take to decolonize, for us to become decolonized, for us to become, put it in our terms today, what would it take for us to be free of white supremacy? And I do want to give a tidbit. Excuse my lighting and everything. I am not home, but the show must go on. So I know my lighting and everything isn't what it used to be, because I'm not at my house in my regular studio, but I want to make sure I still get this video out. So here it is. I got the best light I got. So let's jump back in it. Getting on page 2, we're getting more into decolonization. And remember, we're talking about decolonization, what it is, what role the colonizer plays, and what role the colonized plays. The people who are colonized, what role they play, but also what role do the elite of the colonized play in either helping or hurting the people to free themselves from colonial powers. Okay, so decolonization never goes unnoticed, for it focuses on and fundamentally alters being and transform the spectator crushed to a nonsensical state into a privileged actor, captured in a virally grandiose fashion by the spotlight of history. It infuses a new rhythm specific to a new generation of men with a new language and a new humanity. Decolonization is truly the creation of new men. But such a creation cannot be attributed to a supernatural power. The thing colonized becomes a man through a very process of liberation. Decolonization, therefore, implies the urgent need to thoroughly challenge the colonial situation. An urgent need to challenge the colonial situation, right? Its definition can, if we want to describe it accurately, be summed up in the well-known words, the last shall be first. Decolonization is verification of this. At a deprivative level, therefore, any decolonization is a success. It is bare reality. Decolonization reeks of red hot cannonballs and bloody knives. For the last can be first only after a murderous and decisive confrontation between the two protagonists. This determination to have the last move up in front, to have them clamber up to quickly say something. The famous echelons of an organized society can only succeed by restoring to very means, including the course of violence. But we're also talking about unity, working in unity, working as a team, working as a unit, understanding our place, understanding that we need each other, understanding that in order for us to reach this echelon, in order for us to reach this specific goal, because this is a we goal, not an I goal, a we goal. So in order for us to reach this goal, we are first going to have to decolonize our minds so we can decolonize our actual physical spaces, right? Decolonizing our minds means to getting away from the rugged individualism, getting away, and we're going to talk, Fanon gets into it because he get deep, getting away from the person who has been led to believe that their individual success is enough. Your individual success is not enough. Your individual success and the power that your success can have only comes from the power that your group has, right? So